I like to think I can handle anything.
You were in Shakespeare in Love.
That I can't handle. Move on. No.
Was Gwyneth Paltrow a good kisser?
Was Gwyneth Paltrow? Well, I leave that to the MTV voters.
Ah, yes.
And there was an award, so that might answer your question.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, tell us a little bit about your reaction, not only to the red carpet here tonight, but to the audience seeing you for the first time as Clavius on the big screen.
Well, I've been to a couple of Q&As after screenings. I was really taken by one in Rome where members of the clergy were moved. One man moved to tears, and I was really taken by the value that this movie has in terms of opening up a discussion amongst friends or strangers, or a quiet dialogue with yourself. And I'm struck that there's great value in it.
What was it like previewing the film for the mob?
That was huge. I started out in Rome doing my own research a month before filming, and then roll on a year later. I'd never dreamt in my wildest dreams that I would be at the Vatican meeting the Pope, having him bless myself and my family, and having the Vatican view the film. This was a huge, once-in-a-lifetime, spectacular blessing that I couldn't believe it.
Right before you came in, we were talking about the amount of screen time, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were in every single scene in the film?
You're right, I think there was one, maybe two scenes.
One scene with the two guards where you weren't in, right? Yeah.
How do you go about preparing for a role like this any differently than other roles?
I just throw my whole being and essence into it. I try to root out the truth and the authenticity, and in this sense, it's a Roman soldier, a high-ranking military tribune. I do the research. I go to Rome. For me, the big key in the way in was surprising to me. I thought it might be quite intellectual, but it wasn't. It derived from a physical research, which was enrolling in gladiator school. And it sounds funny, but when you get into understanding the mindset of how the Romans fought, how they thought, how they worked like a clock, they were surgical and brutal and precise, and they were this huge machine that thought as a collective, and that was a really insightful way in to the man, and also working with a detective in Malta to understand, interrogation techniques, or what it is to be a detective. And so I liked both the modern and the ancient kind of way in.
Can we ask you a question regarding the cast? Usually you guys get together and fellowship afterwards and go over scripts and you have dinner. So from all the other experiences, what was this one? How different was this one from the other movies you worked on, the projects?
In terms of when we're not filming?
Right.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that Yeshua and Cliff Curtis, who's a brilliant representation of Christ, I love what he's done, his power and his energy. And all of the disciples and Mary were very bonded as a group. And often on set you hear great laughter in the distance, and I'd be in my kind of lonely in all my leather, kind of, thinking, why are they having so much fun, these guys? And this will go on for months. So there was a quiet little kind of seed of jealousy that I wasn't in that group. But then when I got to film with them, that all changed.
The movie referred to him as Yeshua, but most of us call him Jesus. Did you have a problem with that, or did you just think it was unique when how they just said with that in the movie?
I think if that's authentic to the time, I think that's what we're looking for. I think a great authenticity, or success of the film, is the authenticity. The look, you really do feel you're in that time and place. It's dirty, it's hot, it's ferocious, it's spiritual. So that all lends to the authenticity.
The brotherhood between you and the apostles, it seemed like, I love the apostles you played in this movie. It just seemed like, good casting. I understand that there was bonding, and you guys all got along quite well.
They did. They would wash Jesus or Cliff's feet, and they would do prayers, and they would do meetings, and they would have great discussions and dinners, and they took it very seriously. They took it to heart. And that's what I love for everyone. We threw ourselves in, and when we weren't on camera, it didn't matter. When we were off camera, it was just as integral, the kind of connections.
when you do a movie that deals with the Bible, there are areas that you cover that are not found in the scriptures, and we've seen movies that are biblically based that maybe offend some people. What are your views on the way that the script was able to remain true to the scriptures, but yet obviously fill in some of the gaps that the scriptures don't speak to?
Well, that's a great question, and it's a huge part of the conversation that we have to attribute to the directors and the writers and the producers working hard with faith-based communities, with the church communities, to adhere to Scripture and to really honour Scripture for all its importance and its richness, but not to be scared of it, to embrace it and to be respectful of it. But at the same time, when you do a film, by virtue of it being cameras and lenses, by virtue of you guys being journalists, when you relay what I say, there's going to be an adaptation of what I say, or an interpretation. And it's the same, even if you want to be as true as you can be in your reporting, some word or a sentence will change ever so slightly. And it's the same when you put on a lens, or the lighting, or the angle, or the casting. So it's an adaptation. But so I think that dance, that balance between film, and this is great epic Hollywood high production value. So that when you put that and marry it with Scripture as true as you can, hopefully you get a wonderful balance. Because in the past you either get deeply revisionist movies that mean nothing to Scripture and alienate a lot of people, or you get, from the other side, for cinephiles, you get very boring Sunday school preaching values, which for a lot of people they can't quite access. So getting that balance right has been a huge part of sweat and toil.
Yeah, I love that you brought up that whole thing about, for some people it can be so heavy-handed, that it's not accessible for a non-believer to really appreciate the film as film.
Yes.
In terms of like Hollywood and how Hollywood sees these faith-based movies, do you find that there's a growing respect there in Hollywood as more and more of them come out and they become more and more successful?
Well, let's hope so. I mean, it's a curious one, isn't it? Because one doesn't want to use Scripture or these stories for monetary gain.
Right.
But at the same time, you do want to reach, and our modern medium is film. And people love film and want to escape the daily grind and be taken on a journey. So it's about, I think there might be a move. It's interesting to me that since the Passion, no one picked up the book, no one ran with it, and then recently you get quite revisionist. So no one really knows, and I think what I love about our director and writers is they've been very brave in honouring something and keeping it real as best as one can in film. And let's hope that it paves the way for people articulating Scripture in a high production value sense that doesn't alienate or polarize people, that brings a diverse audience into the auditorium.
Joseph, I want to say, as a Sunday school teacher and as a radio personality, this is going to make me look at my Bible a little bit more and look at the Romans and really look at, we always see what happened, you think about, well, what really happened to those men who were supposed to be at the stone? And you guys brought it out. You was a serious detective. You did everything. You were not determined to give up. But you're making me want to go read my Bible a little bit more and really teach on that and talk about that. What really happened?
Well, that's great. And I think there's an interesting component here to what you've just spoken about. And that is that even those who are non-believers, in the terms of Clavius or the guards or the Romans, anyone who's outside of Yeshua's group, let's say, they still might be the players in God's plan. And what I love about this movie is Clavius gets to save the word. The word gets out because the non-believer defies his conditioning and safeguards these men through a Roman army that's come to butcher them. And so maybe in some mysterious way, Clavius from the beginning, even at the cross, was part of the plan. And I love that. So we can't throw away people who are not believers, because we don't know how integral they might be to the greater mystery.
Would you like to see a pastor preach a sermon on something on that
I would
level?
love that.
That's what I think. That's what I'm looking
Could
at.
you talk about taking this role in the first place? Did you do this because you thought it was a great role, or did you do it because for your own perhaps evangelistic
No,
purposes?
not for anything of self-gain or preaching, not at all. I read this and I honestly got to about page 30, 35 and went, this is a great detective noir set in this period. And then I read on and then I finished it and I was like, oh, well, that was the story of Christ. And it came at such a wonderful angle that I felt like I could embrace it. And I went on the journey and I didn't have kind of questions of this isn't working, it wasn't like that. I just felt like that particular angle gave me a wonderful, fresh way in.
Talk about Cliff Curtis. Yeah. Playing the role of Jesus has got to be just a huge challenge, and you were very complimentary about him. Tell us a little bit about him and what he contributed to the story.
A massive challenge. I think the first thing is let's congratulate him and those who are involved in the casting, the directing, that he's not blonde and blue-eyed. I think this is a great step forward in terms of, again, authenticity.
Right.
He looks Middle Eastern, and this is great. Redressing that balance. It's an interpretation, but I think it's a fresh interpretation and a much needed one. I think it's all. I know that it was his dream as a child to want to play Jesus. I don't know why Cliff told me that, and he got to do it. So great for him.
What do you plan on watching the movie at when it comes out on this Friday? What do you plan on being?
When the movie comes out this Friday? My wife is coming to New York, so I plan on taking her for Alfred Day.
Joseph, I have a question. When you come face to face with Jesus after the resurrection, what was your thought process, or how did you prepare for that role? And what do you think it would have been like for someone to see Jesus after the resurrection who wasn't unbelieving?
Who's to say? I think every individual would react differently, and this is just one man's reaction. It was a very difficult thing to film because I filmed the section where he runs through this street, the back streets, and sees Mary and runs to the room. And as he opens the door, we cut. And then 2 weeks, maybe a month later, we came back to do the reverse when I enter in. So I had to hold that energy. So I remember when we got into the studio where we shot it, I had to work myself into a frenzy of the war machine, the man who was going to shut down these dissidents, these zealots, these terrorists. And then it wasn't a question of acting, it was just a question of reacting to a man who was on a cross not so long ago, who turned my world upside down irrevocably when I witnessed him. So it was kind of just absorbing, reacting, recalibrating. The floor beneath me had just gone. So it was the reality, the sense of my reality then had changed. But I worked myself up into a different, not to expect that, just to go in and cause some bloodshed, really. That was and I was arrested, and like a bolt, I didn't know what to do. So I kind of didn't know what I was going to do, but I just was undone.
Yeah.